It's quite common to think that psychologists are dedicated to solving certain personal problems of patients. Behavioral problems like alcohol addiction, emotional issues like the grief caused by the death of a loved one, or issues related to pathologies also treated in psychiatry. In essence, for a significant portion of the population, psychology is seen as the practice of psychotherapy or even something related to couches, hypnosis, and psychoanalysis in general. The different specializations, branches, of psychology, however, if we take a closer look at what psychology is and has been throughout history, we'll realize that the areas and fields where it can be applied are much broader than what the iconic image of Sigmund Freud providing psychotherapy might suggest. In fact, psychology can have as many facets as human activities. This is what makes it clear that there isn't just one psychology, but many branches of psychology oriented towards different fields of application and different objectives. The psychology focused on psychotherapy with patients is just one of the many specializations within the science of behavior. So, if you want to know about the different branches of psychology and their career prospects, you'll find it helpful to read what follows. 1. Organizational and work psychology. Organizational psychology, also known as industrial psychology, is concerned with researching and intervening in workplaces to find strategies to optimize employee performance while considering their individual needs and the overall needs of the organization. It's essentially the application of psychology to the world of work. People who specialize in organizational psychology often work in human resources departments of companies or offer their services through agencies specializing in personnel selection, training courses, the creation of more effective work dynamics, etc. Because the activities within an organization are diverse, this branch of psychology has many facets. One facet is focused on what makes individual employees perform well in their roles, whether by intervening in the tools available to each person, studying their strengths and weaknesses, or conducting ergonomic studies to ensure they work comfortably. This aspect of specialization is often referred to as occupational or industrial psychology, as it deals more with individual employee performance and their immediate work environment. The other aspect of this psychology specialization is focused on work dynamics and relationships among people within the organization. It deals with workplace culture, leadership studies, conflict resolution, effective communication, and more. This is known as organizational psychology. Work and organizational psychology often have strong career prospects, with personnel selection being one of the areas that create the most job opportunities. 2. Marketing and consumer psychology. Marketing psychology derives from organizational psychology in that it is oriented towards meeting the needs of a company's production machinery. In this case, the needs involve promoting products or services, directing potential demand towards the company's offerings. In summary, among all the branches of psychology, this specialization focuses on research aimed at creating attractive services and products for customers. It plays a role in developing marketing plans, advertising, and product design. Marketing and consumer psychology specialize in making what organizations offer as appealing as possible to the target customer group. They also determine which communication strategies are most effective. This field overlaps significantly with what advertising and media agencies traditionally do, so psychologists in this area often collaborate with professionals in those fields. One valuable asset in marketing and consumer psychology is neuromarketing, which applies neuroscience techniques to understand how potential customers or consumers respond to advertising pieces, packaging designs, and more. Advertising psychologists can also play an important role in these processes by interpreting patterns of brain activation, tracking eye movement in response to advertisements, etc. This is one of the most significant specializations in psychology, particularly in a context where consumers are becoming increasingly immune and skeptical to advertising. 3. Clinical and health psychology. Clinical psychology is one of the most well-known branches of psychology. It involves researching and intervening in psychological problems that affect people's quality of life, from mild to severe. If psychological issues are related to mental disorders, clinical psychologists work alongside other healthcare professionals in diagnosing, prognosing, intervening, and monitoring these psychological issues. Those in this specialization provide a service called psychotherapy, and its form, approach, and procedures can vary greatly depending on the psychological orientation and tools used. As a result, not all health psychologists work in the same way or have the same training, although they may be classified as mental health professionals. 4. Sexology. Sexology, as a specialization within psychology, deals with applying psychology to address sexual issues. It is a branch of clinical psychology and health psychology but is specifically focused on the sexual lives of patients. Although sexology within psychology is especially useful for treating sexual dysfunctions, it can also play a significant role in enhancing the sexual lives of individuals without any such disorders. 5. Neuropsychology. The nervous system is the basis of all human behavior, emotions, feelings, thinking, and communication, so it's natural that one branch of psychology is oriented toward neuroscience. Neuropsychology is a specialization that bridges neurology and psychology. Its purpose is to study mental processes and the functioning of the brain when there are abnormalities or alterations. Neuropsychology is particularly useful in studying brain injuries, malformations, dysfunctions, and diseases affecting the nervous system. Those specializing in neuropsychology examine the relationships between mental and behavioral processes and what happens in the brain to draw conclusions that aid in diagnosis, prognosis, treatment, and symptom management. 6. Forensic psychology. This specialization is focused on meeting the needs of the legal system. A forensic psychologist collects, analyzes, and presents psychological evidence in legal proceedings. For example, they may evaluate a person under investigation to assess the possibility of mental disorders or provide evidence that supports the hypothesis that a person has false memories. Unlike psychotherapy, where the psychologist collects and analyzes information related to an individual's behavior, in forensic psychological assessment, the psychologist's interests and those of the person being examined do not necessarily align. In fact, one of the tasks of a forensic psychologist is to explore the possibility that the person being examined is lying to present a version of events that benefits them. In addition to this, forensic psychology is related to the creation of psychological profiles of criminals to assist in search and capture efforts. 7. Educational and developmental psychology. Almost all branches of psychology pay attention to learning processes, but educational psychology focuses exclusively on them. Its goal is to apply techniques and strategies to ensure that learning is as satisfactory as possible, with a good fit between learners and educators. Furthermore, educational psychology understands education in its broadest sense. It is not limited to what young people do in school, but applies to all areas where learning plays a significant role, whether in worker training courses or within families and communities adapting to new situations. In fact, educational psychology is increasingly emphasizing the need to view education as a networked effort that extends far beyond schools and academies. Therefore, part of the efforts of educational psychologists are aimed at connecting different agents who all have a role in the education of a group of people: teachers, social workers, family members, and more. Developmental psychology is closely related to educational psychology, and they are often seen as one and the same. However, developmental psychology is more focused on behavioral changes related to the maturation of individuals and their progression through different stages of growth, from childhood to old age. Developmental psychology is used within educational psychology to establish criteria for understanding the capacities and learning limits of individuals depending on their stage of development. For example, a 5-year-old child may be presumed to be unable to learn content that requires moderately developed formal logic. 8. Sports psychology. The field of sports psychology is all about implementing strategies to help athletes improve their psychological and physical performance, whether it's in individual performance or cooperation and coordination within a team, if the sport involves teams. The goal is to ensure that the psychological dynamics, learned strategies, and emotional state of the athlete place them in an optimal situation to fully utilize their capabilities. Psychologists who choose this specialization play a role in many processes that are also addressed in clinical and educational psychology, such as guiding self-instructions, developing a positive self-esteem and self-image, resolving conflicts, and establishing effective communication habits during sports sessions, among other things. 9. Social psychology. Social psychology is one of the most fascinating branches of psychology, as it places significant emphasis on the collective dimension and the relationships between individuals in a given context. It's oriented towards investigating how the presence of other people, whether real or imagined, impacts an individual's mental processes. In essence, it's a specialization that although part of psychology, leans more towards sociology than other branches. Moreover, being one of the prominent areas within psychology, it can play a vital role in other branches of this discipline, such as organizational psychology or educational psychology. 10. Community psychology can be seen as an extension of social psychology, focusing on researching and intervening in issues affecting specific communities and localized groups of people. Its aim is to bring about both tangible changes in the context of these individuals and new dynamics in their relationships, leading to an improvement in their quality of life and decision-making capacity. Furthermore, the research and intervention strategies employed by community psychologists promote the active participation of community members throughout the entire process. 11. Couples and family psychology. This branch of psychology can be understood as a specialization within clinical psychology, drawing elements from social and community psychology and, in the case of couples therapy services, from sexology as well. It centers on resolving conflicts within families, often conducted in group sessions. 12. Basic and experimental psychology. Basic psychology is a branch of psychology entirely devoted to researching the most general psychological processes related to human behavior. It focuses on studying the typical psychological processes of mature and healthy human beings to discover trends and patterns that characterize the entire human population. This specialization in psychology is responsible for studying fundamental psychological processes such as memory, attention, reasoning, or decision-making, placing a greater emphasis on the mechanisms underlying these processes than on the influence of the surrounding context.